All right, we're gonna get going here in just a minute. I want to give a couple more people an opportunity to log on. I promise you, what I'm going to share with you is going to challenge you. Uh, it's going to hurt you. It's going to encourage you. But it's a great story. While we're waiting, for those of you that are prayer warriors, my daughter currently, as you know, my wife and I are Marines, served as Marines, and our daughter is going through the crucible right now. Which means in a couple of days she'll officially earn the title United States Marine. So I'm excited about that. And loud and clear motivator. I hear you, Brad. Awesome. Well, you know what, guys? I know that this will be watched and it'll be shared. And so I'm just going to start. For those of you that are watching who don't know, my wife and I served as Marines. We're Marines, once Marine, always Marine. And our youngest daughter is currently at Marine Corps boot camp in Parris Island, South Carolina. And so we're excited about that. Jeff Bassett, thanks for joining. For those of you that don't know, I told you that I want to take a moment and share a story about a captain that I worked for in 1994 in the Marine Corps. And he was just an awesome Marine. You know, I was an enlisted Marine and he was an officer. And so, you know, officers usually stick together, and he always called me crazy. And he'd say, hey, crazy, you know, and then he'd bark out some order, but I worked for him. And there was a new lieutenant that came in. And as the lieutenant came in, a lieutenant of butter bar is a brand new officer of the Marine Corps. And at the time I was a corporal in the Marine Corps. So it's kind of a big deal on the enlisted side. That's when you first become an NCO. Long story short, the lieutenant had heard the captain call me crazy, and so he said, "Hey, crazy, where are you from?" And I said, "Oh, I'm from Michigan, crazy, sir." And he got all fired up, and he's like, "Get down to Captain Turner's office now!" And of course, I went down to Captain Turner's office, and as I got down there, Captain Turner said, "Corporal Woolford, what's going on?" I said, "Sir," I said, "I'm a corporal in the Marine Corps at the time." I said, "I believe that I rate to be called corporal." I said, "This brand new lieutenant is referring to me as crazy like you do, but it's different." He said, "Oh, is that right?" I said, "Yes, sir." So I thought I was going to get in trouble. Instead, he called the lieutenant in. And for those of you that didn't serve in the military, especially the Marine Corps, you'll know that this doesn't happen. Captain Turner said to the lieutenant, he said, let me ask you a question. He said, "Do you not understand the importance of being a corporal in the United States Marine Corps, that you should address him as such?" And he said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "All right, good, get on your face." He said, when you go down, you say corporal. When you come up, you say Woolford." And then he said, "Corporal Woolford, when you call down and you call up." And so long story short, Captain Turner really showed me what it was to be a leader of leaders. Now, I worked for him in 1994. I hadn't talked to him, not even once, until two months ago. And 2 months ago, I was talking on Facebook about my daughter getting ready to go to the Marine Corps. And somebody Facebook messaged me back and said, "Well, she's first got to earn the title." And I said, "Yeah, I understand that she's got to earn the title." I said, "My wife and I were both Marines." And so I clicked on the picture on my phone because it was real small, and I looked, and it was my old captain. And you know, I didn't even know we became friends. So you're talking, you know, since 1995, 1994. So I called him and I reached out to him, and he said, "Man, I can't believe it's you." And he said, "I just want you to know I'm not a captain anymore. I'm a full bird colonel." He said, "I work for General Mattis at CENTCOM." And he went on and on talking about how he led over 800 Marines into combat in 2013. And that was a rough tour for him. Apparently he came back and was having some issues. And so I'm having this conversation with him and talking with him on the phone. And as I was talking to him, for those of you that know me, you know I'm unapologetic as it relates to telling somebody about the Lord or being real with them. And so I said, "You know, hey, Colonel Turner, where are you at in your life with God?" And he said, "Well, you know, I'm not religious, but I believe in God, and you know, for the sake of not sharing everything, I was able to talk to him about the Lord. I was able to talk to him about asking Jesus Christ into his life, and we had great conversations. And just 3 weeks ago, he had asked me, he said, "Jason, I'd like to write a letter of recommendation for you." Semper Fi, Nick Morris. He said, "I'd like to write a letter of recommendation for you, because those of you that don't know, I've been going down from 310 now to 259, and I'm going to keep going because I'm going to be being commissioned with the Navy as a reserve officer to be a chaplain to Marines just like him. Anyways, he said, I want to write you a letter of recommendation, and I'm going to read this to you because I want you to hear about what type of man Captain Turner was and is, and then I'm going to share something with you that's powerful. So I promise you, please hang on for this. So Colonel James F. Turner, the fourth USMC, retired. He retired from the Marine Corps 2 years ago. And he said, I'm very selective about who I provide letters of recommendation for. I will say it with great honor and pleasure, personal pleasure, to recommend Jason Woolford for the Chaplain Corps. I've led literally thousands of Marines in peace and combat through my 30 years. I've always been impressed by Jason's integrity. And by the way, for those of you that are watching, this is not about me. I'm telling you, stay tuned. I promise you, stay tuned. I've been impressed by Jason's integrity and character from the time that I was his company commander almost a quarter of a century ago. Apparently I'm old. During that time, I was Jason's commander and I saw him on a daily basis. I actually reached out and caught up with him. This makes him a part of a rare and very accomplished fraternity, as I led over 800 Marines in combat in Iraq in 2003 and first on the ground joint cyber find and fixed force in Afghanistan in 2013. He said, I've seen chaplains do amazing things in combat, from providing strength before a major battle to consoling recon Marines in the fight as they had just lost a brother Marine. I learned from a chaplain about decompression that was required after combat. And he says something that I didn't think that we needed, only to learn that. He was saying, as a 40-year-old lieutenant colonel with an MBA, I needed as much as the 18-year-old private first class. He said, I was aided by a chaplain when I became the third investigator of the first, personally appointed by General Mattis to resolve what truly happened on April 27, 2011, when 9 American heroes were massacred in Kabul, Afghanistan. Prior to the briefing, the House staff and families who had been lied to by the U.S. government on 2 occasions was greatly assisted by my chaplain and how to better handle this complex briefing. And this contribution had that chaplain's contribution had serious positive impact. I can't go back in time, he says. However, if given the choice, I would have chosen Chaplain Woolford. I believe Jason will make a truly noteworthy chaplain. Jason leads and is led by God, coupled with discipline of outstanding Marine whose experience since have only amplified his abilities and relationship with the Lord. Jason will be given respect on all levels, from a private to a general, and they will respect him in return. I personally reached out to Jason as he's provided me comfort as recently this year. Faith, family, love of country is something that's interwoven into him. He is truly a patriot in the pulpit. He leads his home, community, and globally. I pray Jason is accepted in the Chaplain Corps and hope that those in position choose to have the wisdom to appoint him. Yours respectively, Colonel Jim Turner, United States Marine Corps. So 3 weeks ago, I talked to him about asking the Lord Jesus into his life. And I prayed with him, and he said, Jason, I can't believe that after all of these years, we would accidentally connect. And I talked to him that there are no accidents in the kingdom. God says that you and I that are watching, those of us that have asked Christ into our life, that the only way that we're righteous, that our footsteps are righteous of the Lord, is because of the blood of Christ who covers our sin. And I said, Captain Turner, Colonel Turner, I said, the Lord has brought us together for a purpose. And I prayed with him, and I hung up, and he called me back about 3 weeks ago, and he said, Jason, I was wondering if you could remember that prayer that you prayed and record it and send it to me. And I'd like to listen to it over and over again. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I remembered it to the best of my ability, recorded it, and I sent it to him. And he had told me up to about 2.5 weeks ago that he kept listening to it over and over again. He told me that he was struggling with some personal things in his life, and of course, PTSD and other things that those that sacrifice, for those of you that are watching, go through on a regular basis. And I was excited to know that he was right with God. And about last Thursday, a friend of mine called me and he said, Jason, tell me that I'm not reading this correctly. And it was a post about how Colonel Turner went and got his haircut, put on his dress blues, stacked with all of his awards and ribbons. I'm going to share his story with you shortly on a link. He got dressed, took his DD-214, his honorable discharge, and he went to the VA, sat in the parking lot, and he took his own life. And, you know, I was so hurt by that. And then I thought about how amazing God is. And I told his son that when I preach a message that I'm going to include his dad's story in it. And so I'm sharing it with you today. I want you to know that his son told me that the day before he got his dad got his haircut, his dad had never talked about God ever. And that and I'm paraphrasing, but the barber basically said, your dad sat and talked about how he just recently got right with God. And so I went on to tell his story, and what I'm telling you, the same thing that I told his son. God gives you and I free will, gives you and I the ability to make the choices that we make. And having said all that, God knows the beginning and the end of all time. And so he knew exactly what was absolutely going to happen, when it was going to happen. But he accidentally put me in the path of Colonel Turner, that I could talk to him about the love of Christ. And in the midst of his suffering and his hurting, I believe he called out to the Lord Jesus Christ. Only God knows, but all the signs are there. And I told his son that someday, if you get saved, that you will be able to spend eternity with your dad. And I share this story with you, that if you're a Marine, you're a soldier, you're a veteran, you're currently in the military, I want you to know that God can help you. He can save you. That suicide, taking your life is not the answer. God is the giver of life. And I want to ask you, when I share his story, if you would please reshare his story, and also call your congressman and say that the VA needs to be fixed. He was actually denied service after over 30 years in the United States Marine Corps. And there's a lawsuit going on about it. But most importantly, I'm asking you also to pray for his family and pray for Marines like him. And as I said in the text, I know it can be uncomfortable when you see people in uniform. It can be embarrassing to say, hey, thanks for your service. Thanks for what you're doing. Thank you for what you're providing me and my family. And a lot of times people will respond back and they'll say, like they'll be real short, because they're good, prideful people, and they're humble, a majority of them. And so when you say thank you to them, they might just say, okay, thanks, and keep going. But don't let that stop you from telling them thank you. I posted some questions on here and asked that you would follow through on those. And I want to leave this video telling you Merry Christmas. And Jimbo Turner, if you get to hear this story about your dad, I'm hoping that it'll be shared. I'm hoping that it will help you and your family. And for those of you that are watching, there's a very real God. He loves you. He cares about you. The things that you see on Facebook, all the good things, there's also things that are bad things that people are going through. But, God says this, to focus on those things that are good and holy, those things that are righteous. In other words, focus on the things that God has done good for you in your life, because there it's where he'll give you power of sound mind. And so in closing, if you're watching or if you're sharing this, I want you to celebrate and help celebrate the life and the freedom that people like Colonel Turner gave you. Much like my little 110-pound daughter, who could have done anything and chose to join the Marine Corps, pray for people like them. And I just want you to know, reach out to somebody. Veterans, reach out to somebody. If you're watching and you see somebody in uniform, go give them some money. Bless them, buy them a coffee, tell them thank you, do something for them. And if you live next to a veteran, get out of your comfort zone. It's okay. I just had to do it today with a friend of mine. Anyhow, Merry Christmas to you. And I hope that this story encourages you and blesses you to chase after God. I want you to know that taking your life is not an option. God can give you life and give you life abundantly. I pray God's blessing on you. And thank you, all of you, for joining. Semper Fi. Arrah.